Yo, what is up, everyone? This is episode 17 of the Glimmer Cast. I'm your host, Rhea, and tonight we have another amazing panel with a very special guest this evening. Joining us for the first time ever on the channel is Mr. Joe from Real Shift. How are you doing, my man?
Thank you. I appreciate it, Ray. I appreciate you having me on. What's up to everybody in the chat? What's up to all the panel? I am a lifelong Batman fan, and I'm here to talk some Batman today. So I'm really excited about this. I couldn't have come on a better stream, I don't think. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I just got done watching this movie prior to coming on, and yeah, I'm ready to talk about it because I have a lot of thoughts. So.
Absolutely. Just a heads up for folks who may not be familiar with Joe and his work. He makes amazing commentary videos, and he's not afraid to be brutally honest with his opinions, which is exactly why I subscribe to his content. And yeah, I'm so grateful that he could make time to chat with us. And
Thank you.
We also have our good friend Devin from Nerdcast. How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody else?
Excellent. Great, I just finished watching this movie a third time today. I work from home, so I had it on repeat.
Why do you always watch these movies like 5 or 6 times? What's going on?
My attention span and my memory, or information retention, is very poor. So I need repetition to actually have it sink in. Did you get a chance to rewatch the movie today too?
I watched it yesterday. Gotcha. I did my rewatch yesterday, and only once, thankfully.
No, totally. Last but not least, we have our good friend Mad Max from Movies, Madness, and Entertainment. How are you doing, Max? And happy belated birthday to you.
Oh,
yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday, Devin. Thank you. Thanks. Mm-hmm. I did not watch this movie at all. I watched the movie back in the day, and I have a bad memory as well. So this will be fun. But I remember liking it somewhat. I remember the one thing I do remember rewatching like a few years ago and looking at Jim Carrey's the Riddler, and I'm like, ooh, that did not age well. It was, and I like Jim Carrey, and I was like, nah. But I like the movie overall. I like Val Kilmer's Batman. I like the soundtrack too. It's a nice soundtrack.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that was an era where Batman soundtracks were really a thing. It was always seeing what the big single from the next Batman movie was going to be. And I guess the big one from this was that U2 song.
Oh, I thought it was "Kiss from a Rose."
Yeah, I was going to say "Seal."
Was it "Kiss from a Rose"? I guess it must have been. It must have. I remember both of those songs. I think I probably heard the U2 song more though, and that was actually the song that plays on the ending credits too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
I was surprised it wasn't "Kiss from a Rose." Actually, rewatching it now, I was fully expecting "Kiss from a Rose" to start playing, and it didn't. I was like, "Oh, okay." So, all right. I completely forgot about the U2 song actually. So
it's almost weird because "Kiss from a Rose" doesn't really seem to fit with the vibe of this movie at all.
Not at all.
I don't even know if the U2 song fits, to be honest. But no, Devin, I know that you picked this movie, and I know it's really timely because obviously the Batman came out this week. I'm going to go see it on Friday. I'm really stoked. So what was it about Batman Forever in particular that made you want us to talk about it tonight?
Well, I mean, I get into discussions all the time regarding Batman movies. I'll have to admit that I'm not like the biggest Batman fan in the world, but a lot of my childhood was absorbed with going to see Batman whenever a Batman movie came out. Like that was a big family event. Mm-hmm. And, I think I saw all of those movies in theaters. And I particularly remember I was living in Japan at the time. So I saw Batman Forever on a military base theater. And as a kid, I remember thinking it was pretty cool. Because, Jim Carrey was a big deal at the time. It was like Ace Ventura and all that stuff. And, he was just doing his shtick. And, as a kid that, wasn't allowed to watch in living color and all of that, I was just happy to see, be able to see Jim Carrey do weird shit. So, but once Batman and Robin came out, it was obviously this thing, it was roundly, despised and became this whole cult phenomenon of being a really, really bad movie. And as I went back and revisited those movies over the years, it would always struck me I think Batman Forever is actually worse than Batman and Robin.
That is such a hot take.
That's a hot take.
I get it, but man, it was rewatching this yesterday was tough. It was a tough ordeal for me. And I agree with you, Max. I do actually like Val Kilmer as Bruce Wayne. I think he's probably a better Bruce Wayne than obviously George Clooney. I might even prefer him a little over Christian Bale, to be perfectly honest with you.
Ooh,
but
that's a hot take too.
Well, I don't think. Well, it's not no disrespect to Christian Bale.
Yeah,
I just don't think that he really brought a whole lot of personality to it. And Val Kilmer, he was okay, but I think he had a potential to be better if the rest of the movie wasn't an absolute tire fire.
Yeah. How about you, Joe? Do you have a particular nostalgia for this movie? What are your initial thoughts before you rewatched it?
Yeah, actually, all of my love for this movie is purely nostalgic because when I watch it now, obviously I see a lot of issues with it. It was for people my age, growing up, kind of like what Nerdcast just said, this was the first Batman movie that I saw in theaters. So for that reason alone, it has a bit of some sentimental value to me. Of course I had seen the Keaton movies prior to it, and I pretty much grew up on Batman the Animated Series. That was my main source for Batman. But Batman Forever, that was kind of my definitive Batman movie for a while, because it was it was the first one I could see in theaters. It was the first one I really connected with. It had all these big stars in it. It's bright, it's colorful, it's crazy. So it catches your eye as a little kid. You know what I'm saying? This movie is much more geared toward little kids than say the previous movie, Batman Returns, which is very dark. So, which is a big reason.
Point was made of that.
Yes.
No,
yes,
exactly.
yes,
Did y'all collect any of the toys or McDonald's cups or anything like that? I had the glass mugs. Yes, those are iconic.
Yep. So much. I collect Batman merchandise. Actually, I have an entire room dedicated to it. So and a lot of it is Batman Forever merchandise because there was so much of it, and two, I just love the aesthetic from the packaging to everything. Regardless of what you think of the movie, they marketed this movie really well. It was just it was everywhere when it came out. 95 was pretty much the year of Batman, and I remember that specifically. It was the McDonald's, the Burger King stuff, and the toy stores. So yeah, this was definitely a big movie as far as increasing my fandom for Batman. But as I got older, I realized that there are better things out there. That's what happens when you get older. You kind of grow, your taste change, But yeah, I still have love for it though. I do.
Totally.
I can't help it. Yeah.
No, yeah, totally. And then last but not least, Max, what is your nostalgia factor for this movie, if you have any at all?
Well, yeah, I was really into it. I was disappointed at the time Michael Keaton wasn't coming back, but there was a lot of buzz around it because it's the first recast of Batman on this big screen. The first time we got a different Batman, it's how's this gonna be? And I was happy about the possibilities, and then after this, then they're recast again, but. I had the McDonald's mugs as well until a few years ago. My wife finally had me get rid of them. She's like, "You're not even using them."
They're not meant to be used.
No, they're not. They're good to look at.
They were beat. I liked it. The soundtrack too. I played the soundtrack constantly with the U2 seal, and then they had the Flaming Lips on there too. I love the Flaming Lips.
I don't remember that one.
Yeah. Oh, it's the one where he's talking about it's your boss at your job.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, they have the Offspring in this soundtrack too, and I love the Offspring a lot. My first introduction to them was Crazy Taxi on the Dreamcast. So once I went back and remember that was that band from Batman Forever. So I realized I was a lifelong Offspring fan and didn't even realize it.
And I'm a big U2 fan, so I played that video all the time, Kiss Me, Kill Me.
Totally.
It's a lot of fun. The movie, it's not it's not the one I've watched the most. I do need to go back again. There's a lot of fun memories surrounding it more than the quality of the film. The sound out, the whole time period, the recasting, the music, the hype around it. This is the first time Batman's recast. I like Val Kilmer at the time as well, so I was like, this might be really good, and then it might be a whole new bunch of movies for Batman, and it was just the one with Val. So.
Yeah, right.
No, totally.
I wish he would have got a second chance, and then I I am interested to see if there's good, if they will actually release the Schumacher cut, because I did not know until recently with the popularity of the Snyder cut that there's a different cut that's really different, like tone and stuff. So I'm really interested to see that.
It's supposedly completely different. I'd be really interested in seeing that too, because even when I watched this version of Forever, I can see like a better movie in there somewhere. It's just like it's kind of bogged down with all this other stuff. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Let's get into like what some of the critiques of the movie. I'm going to play the trailer really quick. I know, Max, you didn't get a chance to rewatch the movie, so maybe the trailer will bring back some repressed memories for you.
Okay.
So we can jump right into it. Let's see.
Riddle me this. Afraid of the big black bat in an uncertain world.
God, I miss trailer voiceovers.
Me too. Yeah, me too.
Mask.
The colors are just out of control.
Yes. Neon Gotham.
Yeah.
Your entrance was good. His was better. Love is a game.
What is about the wrong kind of man?
It's the car, right? Chicks love the car. Power is a machine.
Now you've devised a way to read men's minds.
By the way, I've seen your mind, freak.
And revenge is a trap.
You're a devious.
Riddler and Two-Face can make a pretty lethal combination. Train me, let me be your partner.
Who's your tailor?
But first, let's meet our contestants.
Going down.
If the bat wants to play, we'll play.
Was that over the top?
Don't worry too late.
You forgot the part where you kissed the girl.
The real game begins. Courage now. Truth always. Batman forever.
It's funny how they use the Danny Elfman theme, but it's not in the movie.
It's
at all.
not in the movie. Yeah, it's so weird.
They're like, this theme is much better than the one we have, so we'll just use it for the trailer and get everybody in the theater. But yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like what I actually did appreciate of like the score in the movie was that I did get a sense of like, Batman whenever it would start playing. It was super orchestral, like super choreographed with what was happening on the scene on the screen at all times. But that movie to me definitely had a lot of scenes that felt overly choreographed. So we can like jump right into, some of our, some good call outs and then some bad call outs. I'll let our special guest Joe take the first shot at it. So what are some standout, great moments in your mind about this movie?
The great moments. I actually this is kind of skipping all the way to the end, but it's the most memorable scene in the movie to me. And I actually like the way that it plays out because it's very much a comic book scenario, which is clearly what they were going for. They were going to the more comic book route in this movie. So the whole situation that Riddler sets up at the end where Batman kind of has to choose between Robin and Chase and who he's going to save, basically. And we've seen that again, actually, in The Dark Knight. So it was like a similar situation where they do reuse that kind of, but I just found that whole moment to be very good in a sense that like Batman's put in a situation where you're not sure how he's going to get out of it. It looks, for all intents and purposes, it looks like he's not going to be able to save both of them. And it's just kind of like such a Batman moment when he actually does end up saving both of them. And part of me just kind of got goosebumps because I know as a little kid I probably jumped out of my seat when that happened, when he catches Robin right before he hits the water, you know what I mean? So like that was like probably my favorite moment in the movie, to be honest. As far as like great moments, I really like how they set up the ending, like the finale. Like I think the finale is actually quite good in the movie, to be honest, with the campiness aside, of course. But yeah, but that's probably my favorite moment in the movie.
Yeah, no, now that I think about it, did the sort of campiness of the deaths of Two-Face and the incarceration or like like when Riddler like was incarcerated, but then he like was impacted by like the brain drain, thing. Was that sort of weird? Did it like kill the tone for you at all?
Yeah, well, that part I'm kind of like overlooking a little bit. It's more or less the part where Batman is in this situation where it looks like it's a no-win situation, and he's got Riddler and Two-Face standing in front of him, and his two closest people are both captive, and it's just a very comic booky Batman moment to me. Like that aspect of it right there. After that, like where Two-Face shows back up, I feel like the movie's dragging out a little bit too long at that point, because it's like, and it should be noted that Batman also pretty much murders Two-Face in this movie. So like he pretty much murders him, and I know that's the thing where people take issue with that, but Batman kills people sometimes in certain movies. Certain versions of him kill people, but yeah, the whole Riddler thing where he's like getting his brain sucked out, and then he kind of loses his memory and he thinks he's Batman. That's a little campy. Yeah, I could see it, but I guess that was their way of wrapping up the whole he knows his identity thing, and they had to do it somehow, so they just kind of did the easy fix kind of thing. But yeah, that does ruin it a little. But yeah, I just love that moment where he like catches both of them. That's pretty much the cool part about it. I did find a lot of the fight scenes to be pretty underwhelming for a Batman movie. I saw someone just mention that. I was like, yeah, some of the fight scenes were pretty underwhelming compared to what we get now. Like, it's like, yeah, they're quite underwhelming, but it wasn't really about that back in '95, I guess. So.
No, totally. How about you, Devin? What do you think about any of the scenes in the movie that particularly stood out for you?
Like positively?
Yes. Now we'll do positives first to get that out of the way, because I'm sure negatives are going to take up most of the show.
I mean, somebody had mentioned earlier that they thought the cinematography was good. And I would say that for the style they were going for, and this was definitely like the entire movie from start to finish was as close to a direct comic book translation as you're probably ever going to get. They wanted this to be a comic book on the screen, and for all intents and purposes, it looks like that. Yeah. And following up the two Burton movies, where Tim Burton's visual style is so distinct and so, I mean, it's unique and it's impressive in a lot of ways, cinematography speaking. Following that up with this movie is a pretty tough task. But I think that there were a lot of shots that were like pretty cool. There was a lot of camera things that were camera tricks that were, kind of neat. And, there was something, there was a lot of architecture and whatnot, design that made me realize like, oh, wait, this is something that I've missed in like the Christian Bale Batman movies, where it has like, and it was very much like prominent in the 90s Batmans, especially with the cartoon, the animated series, like that Art Deco old school style look. And there was a lot of that in there, like the Dr. Meredith, her office had like a 40-foot door or whatever that for some reason he just burst right through. Well, we can get to later.
You're talking about Meriden, right? Or
yes.
Meridian?
Chase Meredith or something like that?
Chase Meridian, yeah.
Yeah, Chase Meridian, yeah. Her office looked really awesome, and like a lot of the buildings, a lot of the rooms looked really awesome. There was some really good stuff going on where it was like, wow, okay, there's a lot of really cool Art Deco kind of stuff, like really old Gotham kind of, Tim Burton inspired sort of things that we're seeing that looked really cool. And, even though the colors, bothered me at times, I thought that it had its own visual style that was unique. And for 1995, in some respects, kind of impressive.
Yeah. Gotham had character in this
Gotham
movie.
had character, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
the
I know that
stylization was on point.
Yeah.
a lot of the criticisms, like negative criticisms, there wasn't a lot, but a lot of the negative criticisms that I had heard from like the Christian Bale movies was that Gotham didn't feel like Gotham because they just shot it in Chicago. I think they shot Dark Knight in Chicago. I don't know if they did with Batman Begins or not, but I mean, it was just Chicago, right? So it didn't really kind of have that like Gotham feel. And at the time when those movies came out, I was neither here nor there on that. I just, didn't really care. I thought it was a cool movie regardless. But going back and watching this, it's like, oh, okay, there's definitely, I'm remembering that there's a vibe to Batman. There's like a feel, and I think this movie was probably one of the last Batman, and we'll see with this new one, but it was probably one of the last Batman movies that kind of captured that vibe of the city.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to go ahead and read Jack Slaw's comment. When you see the old superhero movies and the superhero movies of today, and not like Deadpool, just the stuff for young adults, nowadays we look at that movie and think, was it made for kids? So I'm thinking like we're getting, to Jack's point, we're kind of getting this Mandela effect of sort of like recreating the memories that we have of these movies because of our changed lens of watching it as adults. Like, do you guys think that is definitely what's happening, or do you feel like the same impact of seeing it as a kid still resonates with you as an adult?
I think for me, like I said, like from a pure nostalgic standpoint, like it does still have that impact on me, but like like looking back on it now, like I said, like as an adult now, like it's a little bit harder for me. Like I didn't quite enjoy myself, obviously, this time around as I did when I was, 5-6 years old or whatever I was. So like, because even though I have a movie channel and obviously I look at things a little bit more critical now, so that plays into it too. So it's like, like I'm watching the movie and I'm like, this movie was clearly made to sell toys. Like that's what I'm looking at it as. Like it was made to sell toys. And Batman and Robin took it even further. It was all made to sell toys. So it was like, like the Schumacher like era in Batman to me is just like the most commercial Batman has ever been. It was like after Returns and the backlash that movie got, Schumacher came in and WB was just like, listen, you need to lighten this up. We need to sell some merchandise. We need to make the parents happy again. And that's what they did. And that's how I view these movies basically now. It's just one big toy commercial. Like, honestly.
Yeah. Totally. How about you, Max? Is the impact of your memory of this movie changed from your perception of it as a kid, or do you still have that sort of like through rose-colored lenses, memory of that movie? Or is it like a 90-minute 2-hour long toy commercial, like Joe said?
It's not. I still like it. It holds a place in my heart because of the time period, but the quality, is not there as much as I'd like. There's some great things. There's some awful things. Like I hate the Batmobile. Like that Batmobile looks garbage, and I don't like to say that about stuff. Like there's the original Batmobile from the Keaton one that was so much better. There's some things that were a downgrade. He looks great in the costume, but it also kind of felt like he was in a different movie than the Riddler and Two-Face too. It's like they were on different tones.
10,000%.
Okay, like Jim Carrey just was doing Jim Carrey. He didn't, and I like Jim Carrey, and Jim Carrey's done some great serious work too as an actor. But at this time, it's kind of a disappointment for Jim Carrey as well, because he could have. I guess maybe he looked at the costume and he went over the top with the costume. But
what do we think about Tommy Lee Jones's portrayal of Two-Face? Like I feel like I was robbed of a potentially good Billy D. Williams performance. Absolutely, I think we can all agree there.
Yes.
I kind of had that begrudging, feeling hanging over me as I rewatched this movie as an adult. As a kid, I had no idea, who Billy D. Williams was, and I didn't really like have any connection of like, oh, this character's different, it's an entirely different person than the previous movie. So, what do y'all think about that? Like, and then his performance overall for y'all?
The villains were definitely a downgrade from this and Batman and Robin, and how there were such interesting takes on them in the Tim Burton movies. So that and really a lot of my love and of all comic book movies are really a lot of the main factor comes down to the villains. The villains were off for me, and these guys, even though it's not Billy D. Williams, Tommy Lee Jones could do a great performance, but he didn't. I don't think he tried this one. I don't know if it was part of the direction, the costume design, but it was just off.
It was Jim Carrey. He hated Jim Carrey, and he
really
made him miserable.
True.
Yes,
and he saw Jim Carrey as a scene stealer and was trying to match and top him.
Yes, yep.
So
they basically were competing to see who could be more over the top, and they both succeeded. Quite frankly, it's like what's crazy is that like I feel like Tommy Lee Jones and Jim Carrey would make a really good Two-Face and Riddler under a different situation. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like if it wasn't them constantly competing with each other, and maybe if they had a better script, I feel like they could have been really good as those characters.
Yeah, and that's the sad part because like Jim Carrey, you know, he was doing his thing, and for whatever it's worth, you know, that was it. It was Jim Carrey's Riddler.
Yes.
But Two-Face, and we know Tommy Lee Jones to be, you know, when he needs to be, he's a great actor. And he could be very menacing too, just as, you know, a beat up old Texan. He could be very menacing. You know? And there is some space there where it's like, okay, if he had, I don't know, maybe if he had a little bit less of an ego or whatever the case may be, if he was seeing Jim Carrey being this wild, over the top sort of guy, and he was already a character at Two-Face. Two-Face is not like a you know, overly bombastic character. He's a character who is naturally, you know, menacing and reserved. That's what makes the whole coin flip aspect of his persona like terrifying, because he can go either way, you know, based on fates. So if he had played into that and like was a more subdued, like menacing, darker, grimmer kind of Two-Face, opposite of what Riddler was, it could have been a really awesome pairing. And like whenever I say stuff like I think this is worse than Batman and Robin, I agree with you, Max. Like the big draw on a lot of these Batman movies isn't Batman, it's the villains. And I love Arnold Schwarzenegger and Uma Thurman, you know, in that movie, you know, and they can carry a lot of that ridiculous movie if you know not to take it seriously.
Yeah,
but I can see that. Yeah, in this movie, every scene that those guys are in, it just reduces the property value to zero immediately. And you know, Val Kilmer, he starts to bring it back a little when he gets his scenes. And you know, even Chris O'Donnell, you know, he tries with his scenes too. And
I completely forgot this is the first time Robin's in there. I'm like, oh yeah, Robin's in there.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask y'all this really quick. It's kind of a small segue. So, y'all have seen Under Siege, right? It's this Steven Seagal Die Hard knockoff on a boat. On a ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Uh-huh.
So like, clearly, like Tommy Lee Jones's character is a little unhinged, a little like, you know, menacing and terrifying in that movie as well.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, did he like try to just did the studio just tell him to channel that same energy, but you know, but exponentially more for Two-Face? Because to y'all's point, like the animated versions of Two-Face that I was familiar with before rewatching this movie do not match the Two-Face that I'm getting in this movie. So I'm like wondering what like. Oh, because Under Siege, you know, performed so well and he was such a memorable villain. Are they just trying to, you know, kind of like carbon copy him over? Like, I don't know if y'all have any thoughts around that. Like, because it seems like a really close, like, you know, performance match in my opinion.
That could be a thing because, like, you know, Hollywood likes to replicate the success of other things and try to carry that same momentum over. That's something they've always done. So it's like, it's very possible that they could have seen him in that movie and that's why he got the job, maybe even, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know where the timelines line up, like where that was made and where this was made, but like, as far as like, yeah, Hollywood seeing him in that movie and being like, you know what, he's kind of eccentric in this movie. Maybe he can bring some of that Jack Nicholson energy over here, and like he can be basically the new version of the Joker, which is what he was. Like he wasn't Two-Face; he was basically
they were all the Joker.
Yeah, right. They're all the Joker, right? Exactly. So like, I could definitely see that. Honestly, that's actually a really good observation because I could definitely see that being a thing.
No, totally.
Yeah.
No, Devin, your thoughts on Tommy Lee's performance? You know, did it like it was like, to your point, a little bit over the top and kind of jarring and reduced the property value to zero, to your point. But was there anything else that you wanted to add about on that specifically for Tommy Lee Jones's performance?
Well, I mean, it was just a supreme waste of talent. Like, I love Tommy Lee Jones and basically anything he pops up in. I even watched that ridiculous movie where he was like, you know, he was like a caretaker to the Texas football cheerleaders and whatnot. I forget what it's called. Man of the House. It's a big Austin movie, but like I even watched that one. You know, like
it sounds like a mid 2000s, like sort of like Playboy Bunny-esque type of movie.
Yeah, it was early 2000s, I think, maybe 2003. But yeah, his like Two-Face was so ridiculous in this movie. He had no, I don't know what his. So I guess his whole thing was he just wanted to kill Batman, but like he didn't have any structure to anything he was doing. He would just show up like a random boss fight, and like a bunch of dudes would be with him. Like at one point, he was like pushing a stroller. He was just like a babushka pushing a stroller across the street, and then suddenly he has a rocket launcher. I'm like, what is going on here? It's like an Acme cartoon. But like there was no substance to the character at all. He was just there to try to be a foil to Batman. And maybe that's a part of why he was being so over dramatic in his acting, because like Jim Carrey's character had motivation of some sort, you know. He had ambition, and then like he was snubbed and fired and all that sort of stuff, and he's just also kind of crazy. So like there was at least like something that Jim Carrey as an actor can like play off of. But Tommy Lee Jones' character had nothing. So
totally,
he even had like a rushed origin story in like a news segment. It was like he was like, "Oh yeah, he burned his face and he hates Batman now." That's it.
I have a question about that news segment. Why was Batman in the court fully dressed
in broad daylight too?
Broad daylight, yeah, in the gallery in like his full cowl and everything.
Oh man, it made more sense if that was like maybe Bruce Wayne trying to save him or something.
Exactly, like if Bruce Wayne was there, it makes sense. He's friends with Harvey Dent.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I thought the same thing watching it this time. I was like, why is Batman even there? It's a good point. It's a good point.
How about you, Max? What would you say about the performances for Jim Carrey versus Tommy Lee Jones? Like, which one would you say is superior in your opinion?
I think Jim Carrey, because it's just more he got the focus. You know, Two-Face was just there. There's not a lot of substance to the story. He just, you know, he's just there. Also the whole plot with stealing people's thoughts and I'm thinking about that. I was like, what the hell? This is a weird turn for even the story, you know, but at least there's something there. And then towards the end, I think he did okay. And then towards the end, I really got annoyed with the Jim Carrey Riddler towards the end, where his like head gets big, was stuck to the tube. I'm like, what is this? Is really, really strange.
Yeah. That's Joe's favorite scene.
Yeah, really? I hate that scene. I'm like, what in the world?
That's right after my favorite scene.
Yeah. So yeah, I would say he wins by default because he actually was written with a story.
Yeah.
You know, but it's a strange story if you really think about it. Like this is like on the levels and it's because I like the old show with Adam West, but like the plot of stealing people's thoughts with watching TV is just really weird to jump from the Burton movies. Huge jump.
No, totally. But yeah, like I also wanted to kind of like quickly chat about the Chase Meridian character, who was pretty much invented just for this movie. And I feel like this is where the movie we can jump into the bad, you know, critiques of the movie now too, where it was like a missed opportunity to actually have some serious, you know, like discussion or some sort of like development around the psyche of Batman and what his, you know, process of dealing with traumatic events that he's still dealing with, that we get flashbacks of in the movie but it's always, you know, framed in the context of it being a gag or never really taken seriously. But yeah, Joe, what are your thoughts on how they try to, you know, frame the psychology of Batman in this movie?
Right. Well, that's kind of what I meant when I said earlier how there is a good movie in here somewhere, because I feel like, especially if the Schumacher cut ever comes out, supposedly there's a scene in this version of the movie where he's got the red book or whatever, and supposedly that red book has significance in the plot line that was cut out of the movie. And there's this whole backstory about how that was his dad's book, and like there's more significance to it than what is given to it in the theatrical cut. So like I do feel like if we did get a Schumacher cut, it would be like more diving into Bruce's psyche, and it would make Chase Meridian a bit more of a meaningful character, because in this version she's just kind of just chasing Bruce and Batman. That's all she's really doing. She's not really doing anything. Like she's like stating the obvious half the time. Like she's figuring out riddles that Batman already figured out or something. It's like she doesn't really serve a purpose other than to be his you know, damsel in distress basically. But yeah, I do think that's the biggest thing that I think is a missed opportunity in this movie, because And I could tell it was probably because of WB's meddling in the story, probably, and them wanting him to change it and make it less serious and more campy. But there is a good story there as far as like tying it back into Bruce's origin, which is what they were clearly trying to do with those flashbacks. They just didn't have enough of them to make it actually make sense in this movie. Like it felt very choppy in this movie because there's no substance behind it. So yeah, I do think that was definitely a huge missed opportunity for sure.
So it wasn't just Zack Snyder. They started meddling way
Yes.
back then too.
Yes, they've been meddling for a long time
with the tone and to sell more toys and stuff. So
yes,
you know, they've been messing with Batman for a while.
This is a common WB thing. They do this all the time. They listen to the wrong people and they start, you know, the worst part about it is when they infringe on someone's creative, like infringe on their creative ideas and like try to change someone's ideas. Like Schumacher clearly had an idea for this movie. He clearly had a style that he was going for, and they just came in and basically just changed it on him. Like, and I don't like that because I like creative freedom with directors. Like, if you're going to hire a director, let him do what he does, regardless of how it turns out. Like, you hired him, so let him do what he's got to do. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's definitely a problem for WB, and it always has been. So
Max, what do you think about like to Joe's point about like the studio meddling and like the potential like story we could have gotten? Do you have any like ideas of like further potential in the story that we didn't get in this movie based off of the threads that were left from it?
This is the reason I'm so curious about the Schumacher cut, because I mean I love the movie just because of, you know, the nostalgia reasons, like we said, but I don't really see a great different version. I'm like, okay, really? Okay,
it's a stretch. It's a stretch.
I mean, I want to see it, but I just don't. Okay,
Yeah.
There's a darker cut that's more serious. That's, you know, okay. I mean, I'm looking at the Batmobile. I'm looking at the costumes and the acting of Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
And I just don't see it. I'm like, where does this other version come from? Did he do a completely different take? I mean, it's possible. Jim Carrey sometimes just riffs. You might have a completely different.
He was probably improvising a lot, and there's probably alternate cuts of him. You know, maybe he was more like stoic and serious, and like more like the Riddler that we kind of know from like Batman the Animated Series and stuff like that, where he's more about intelligence than just, you know, acting crazy. But it's possible, but I wouldn't put money on it.
I think there's potential with the talent involved, but not
Yeah.
with what I see on screen. Like
Yeah,
the storyline with the tube
definitely.
and the costumes and the
Yeah, it's
Batmobile.
Yeah.
I just don't see it there. Like maybe with the acting, maybe different, you know, different.
Well, you raise a good point, Max, because like this is like another kind of like small segue. So like Joe, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Release the Ayer cut movement, but that's also something that I'm a huge advocate for, especially to your point about creative, you know, integrity and respecting, you know, the director's, you know, right to pursue their vision and things like that.
Right.
So like to Max's point though about, you know, the theatrical cut that we did get, and then admittedly the extended cut of that version of that movie is better. I don't know how much more we can expect for the movie to improve if there were to be a true director's cut. So I don't know if you have any thoughts around that at all, like that small segue about the Ayer cut.
Yeah, it's basically I mean, for all it would be the same movie, I think, if we got it. Just you would have more backstory for Bruce's turmoil, his inner turmoil about his parents dying. I think that's all that would really change about the movie. And there's like a scene where he like encounters this big man bat creature or something. Like it's basically Man Bat back in 95. Like, but it's supposed to be like symbolic of him turning over and deciding to become Batman. So that's all we really get. I think all the Jim Carrey, all the Tommy Lee stuff, all that would stay the same. Like, I don't think anything would change there. So to his point, it probably wouldn't change much, and we'd probably be getting basically the same movie, just with a little bit more extra scenes, basically. But yeah, as far as like the Ayer cut and everything, like and it goes to this is what WB has always done. You know what I mean? With David Ayer, he clearly wanted to go a different direction as well. Whether you like that direction or not is really irrelevant. I mean, he was hired to do a job. He should be allowed to do that job. You know what I'm saying? It's that's what I always tell people about Snyder, who don't like him either. Like, it's not about whether you like him and his vision or not. It's about allowing him to complete his vision and then move on to something else. And then we'll get a new iteration, because this is never going to stop. You know what I mean? So yeah, I definitely think there is something to that for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. How about you, Devin? As far as like the argument for allowing the director to, you know, be truly, you know, in control of their artistic vision in the final cut of the film versus, you know, working within the studio system and, you know, some of the red tape that they have to deal with, like budgets and like scheduling and all these other things, and marketing and product placement and all these, like, you know, like check boxes basically that a movie has to go through nowadays. And even like back then, 30 years ago, like to shoehorn in, you know, product placements and things like that. Like, do you think that, in your opinion, this movie fails to have that balance, or is it like too over the top, you know, commercialized and made to be like a huge advertisement? There was no, you know, artistic creativity in the final product.
That's a good question that I feel like only Joel Schumacher can answer whether or not there was artistic vision at the onset of the project. I mean, clearly at the time, Batman was just like a money-making franchise that was being directed towards children. So the idea that they would greenlight this for anything other than commercial purposes is probably a little bit of a stretch. But having said that, like every film that's being produced by a studio north of like $2 million, you know, the producers are going to try to have their say. They're always going to get studio notes. And sometimes those studio notes are good. There are instances of studio notes that have saved movies rather than ones that have destroyed them. So, but it's always like a balancing act that, you know, some studios are better. WB clearly is pretty awful at it. There are plenty of studios that aren't. So I agree with what Joe said about, you know, if you hire a director that is known for their style, then you should let them direct towards their style. Like if you just want, you know, paint by numbers, there are plenty of directors you can get that's just going to go by the book, that's just going to follow the studio notes, and you will end up with, you know, your garden variety movie that you want to put out just to sell toys and stuff. And, you know, I feel like a good recent example of that kind of a power struggle between those two poles would be Solo, a Star Wars story, where they had Lord and Miller, who was trying to do their very stylized thing, and then Disney just didn't like it, axed them, and replaced them with Ron Howard, who was a very paint by numbers kind of, you know, I'll follow my marching orders and hit all the studio notes, you know, where it needs to be hit, and then just put out the product on time and under budget. You know, and you know, we saw what we got with that. And sometimes it's not always that bad. Like, you know, Back to the Future was a movie that famously, you know, underwent a lot of reshoots and revisions and whatnot. And it ended up being like one of true classics that has ever existed in cinema. You know, so like it's really hard to determine, you know, whether or not. And I get it from like the point of view of somebody who has put millions of their own dollars into the project. It's very hard. It's very hard to be able to say like, okay, you have no say in this. You know? So I am sympathetic to that. But like, if you do hire like an auteur, let them do their thing.
Well, I think it's just like it comes down to like the interview process, basically. Like they had to have had conversations about the direction of the movie, like, and the director had to say, I want to go this direction, and the company had to say, I want to go this direction. So you have to find the right person who's going to share the same vision, because if you're heading in two different directions, then most likely the movie's not going to turn out well. You know what I mean? So like it kind of starts.
Like the big problem always happens once you start hitting film. You know, once you start looking at the dailies, and it's like, oh, wait a second, we wanted this to be like this kind of thing, but it's not coming across that way. You know,
like,
that
makes sense.
We need to do like, you know, we wanted Jim Carrey to be, you know, a boisterous like Riddler, but like he's so over the top that he's literally devouring everything that's on the screen. And you know, we need more out of you, Tommy. You're sharing the screen with him, so give us more, Tommy, and like, you know, or anything like that. Like once you start looking at the dailies, once you start getting into the editing room, like what you had as a script, and you were talking across a table with the producer, it's probably almost 100% different than, you know, what you have on the film is almost 100% different than what you plotted out, you know, in advance. And then that's when you start getting the problems. That's when studios start being like, well, this is maybe a little bit too dark. Do we really need to see Batman like murder him with a bunch of coins or whatever? And and then you have your directors who are like, okay, yeah, that's sure, no problem. We can just do this. We'll fix this and edit, or maybe if it isn't too costly, we'll reshoot this. But then you also have those directors that are like, no, fuck you. This is my vision. This is what we're gonna do. And then you get those problems. So it's always hard to tell, especially like back in the 90s. Like it's way easier now because so much of like the visual effects are computer generated.
Yeah.
But like if you're building sets and you've got like all of these really specific set pieces that are designed to be, used in a very limited capacity, and it turns out it doesn't work. that's a colossal failure. That's gonna cause real problems down the line. And
I just want to call out the visual effects, especially because a lot of them are practical. And Max, I wanted to get your take on this too, because I know we're both like really big fans of like practical effects and Sam Raimi for sure. So like back in this era where like things on screen were actually physical objects being blown up or destructed, or miniatures, in models and things like that. That was a glorious time in film. Like, wouldn't you agree? Like, what did you think about like the visual effects and practical effects in the movie?
I think some of it was great. There's some odd parts to it still with the even Val Kilmer looked great as the Batman, but then when he's running, like the ears are wobbling. It's like, and then the whole Batmobile.
What is that? A cowl? Is that what it is? The cowl?
Yeah, the cowl.
The cowl,
You notice when him and Robin are running, it's like, dude, it's like a cowl is like going like that, and even the Batmobile too when it's going around. So I prefer practical effects, but it's a little hit and miss in this particular one for me.
Yeah,
but
and there are moments of CGI too that like I think haven't aged all that well. Like there's a wide shot of Gotham that is very obviously created on computer. Like at least to me, it looked like it could have been a miniature, maybe, I guess, but it looked like CGI to me. It's like it's zooming in on Wayne Enterprises, and it just didn't look good. It didn't look, but it's 95, so you kind of have to. A lot of times it depends on the movie, but sometimes like shoddy CGI will actually add charm to an older movie. Like it depends on the situation usually, but yeah, in this particular case, I did find it to be not so good.
Yeah, no, totally. How about you, Devin? Any thoughts around like the use of CGI, practical effects, visual effects overall in the movie?
I mean, I didn't have any there wasn't anything in it I saw that I was like, oh, that's awful or anything like that, other than like the weird color, like neon colors everywhere. Like there was a scene at the beginning where Two-Face is on a helicopter, and I think the helicopter is CG, and it's pretty obvious. And at that point, it's like, oh, this is brutal. But it's only one scene, and then after that, like for the most part, for the rest of the movie, like I didn't have a problem with the Batmobile. Maybe I wasn't paying that close attention to it, but I was like, oh yeah, the Batmobile used to look different than the Tumbler I'm used to seeing. It was fine for me, and I guess there was the motorcycle and the boat also. There was a lot of toys in this movie that they were trying to sell.
Yes. I have the toy version of that Batmobile, and it looks great as a toy.
Oh, really?
But it doesn't really look as good as an actual Batmobile. Because I mean, like you're not exactly hiding with neon, everywhere on your Batmobile. So it's like it doesn't really line up with the character we know of as Batman, but it does look great as a toy. It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Okay.
So
I will concede the Batmobile thing then.
Yeah.
But, I thought the practical effects were pretty okay.
Yeah.
What about the we can close out on this note just for while we wrap it up. The actor for Dick Grayson / Robin, what was his name? I know that he was like
Chris O'Donnell.
Chris O'Donnell.
Yes, yeah. I forgive me if we already talked about this, but I actually really liked his portrayal of Dick Grayson. Although I will say that like a lot of like the teenage angst that he was expressing was a little bit more petulant than, a kid who just lost his entire family. There wasn't enough, grief or, anger in his performance for me there. It just came off as like really, annoying, like young kid. So yeah, I don't know, Joe, if you have any thoughts on the performance.
I think I've said for a long time that like, I don't think the character of Robin translates well to live action. And I think it's because, to me anyway, just being a fan of the comics, like I think you need to have Robin go through this evolution of being an orphaned kid, just like Batman, and then Batman kind of raising him and turning him into an extension of himself. And that's when he becomes Robin. Like, that transition happens way too quickly in this particular, and I understand it's one movie and they have to make it work, but like even having him as old as he is in this movie, it's a bit weird because it's like, is Batman adopting him because he's like 20 years old? You know what I'm saying?
And that was my thought. I was like, you're 25. Go get an apartment somewhere.
Yeah. It's very weird how they structured all that. And it's like, and that's why I've always said, like, Robin doesn't really translate. And that's why this version of Robin is much more like Nightwing than he is Robin, because he's angsty.
Even dropped that name.
Yeah, he's going against Batman. You know what I mean? Like, initially, Robin's just his sidekick, but in this, he's already like going against everything Batman says. He's being defiant towards him. Like, he's like, it's like they skipped the Robin arc and went right to Nightwing, but they still called him Robin. Like, that's pretty much how I took it. So that is like one of the most awkward parts in the movie. Like, don't get me wrong, I would love to see an updated version of Robin, but I don't know how it would be able to come off and not be corny, I guess you could say. Like, it would be very weird for them to have like a kid version of Robin, obviously. Like, I don't think that would translate to live action. So I don't know how you would portray that character better in modern times. I don't know if you can. Like, I really don't. Like, it's like Fantastic Four. Like, I think some things don't translate to live action. And like, for some reason they can't translate Fantastic Four. I don't know if you could translate Robin either. Like, it's just one of those things. Yeah.
How about you, Max? Thoughts on Chris O'Donnell's performance?
Now that I'm rethinking, I do have to rewatch it, but I think that was actually one of the better parts of the movie, even though he is older, and it is weird that he's adopting. Like, he is obviously an adult. He's not like a child that Bruce is adopting. But besides that, I think that his story was pretty good. It was the better part of the movie, actually. Now that I'm rethinking, man, we were obsessed with Chris O'Donnell in the 90s too. He was everywhere and then disappeared. And I like Chris
Batman
O'Donnell.
And Robin.
Yeah. So I think that was
he
a
didn't
good
totally
part.
disappear. Like, he is NCIS right now. It has been.
Oh, really?
It has
That's
been for
awesome.
like the past decade.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
I like the circus scene and everything with his parents. I thought that was actually well done.
Yeah, he was kind of like the pretty boy
it's
actor of the time. And I think that's why they chose him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the girls liked him. He kind of had like a little bit of an edge to him. So we're like, oh, like, people will like him as Robin. So they just kind of moved him over. But and he's not terrible in it. It's just like, again, it's just the situation and how it's all set up. It's kind of awkward. That's all.
No, I totally agree. And how about you, Devin? What are your thoughts on the performance for Chris O'Donnell?
I agree with Max. Like, pretty much every scene he was in, because like, Joker, or not Joker, but Two-Face and Riddler weren't in it. It added a lot more gravitas. Like, he was interacting with Val Kilmer, who was also doing a good job as Bruce Wayne. And there was he was interacting with Alfred, and that actor did a good job there. There was a lot of character building moments, and he had opportunities to really like at least try to go through a gamut of different emotions, and I think he did a pretty good job. And it was very, like, the first thing I thought was like, dude, you're like an old man. Go out there and like get a job, get an apartment. What are you doing? But and you're right. He was more petulant than he was like a lost orphan. And I think that because of his age, they had to play it that way. Like, he was in his rebellious years, I suppose, rather than just being like a small child. But for what it was, it worked. But I thought he was probably one of the better parts of the movie. I mean, honestly, if you had a cut of this movie where it was just everyone that wasn't Riddler and Two-Face, it probably wouldn't be that bad of a movie, really.
Is this movie like bad in your opinion? If we had to like kind of like go around and like give our final thoughts on the movie, like, do we feel like this is a bad product ultimately? Because it feels like a lot of us see the potential in what it could be, and we're holding on to that hope and giving the movie passes here and there because we know the production process was so flawed. Yeah. So that's kind of like my personal lens anyway. I don't want to speak for y'all. So like, Joe, if you wanted to kind of add on to that.
I think this movie is, for people like me, it's the very definition of a guilty pleasure. Like, it's clearly not a good movie. There's really nothing good about it. There's nothing all that memorable about it, but you still find enjoyment in it for whatever reason, it could be personal reasons, nostalgic reasons. Like, yeah, like if I had to give it a rating, because I have my own personal rating system on my channel, like I would totally give it like the guilty pleasure rating. Like that, I think it fits in perfectly there. And it's basically just, the movie's a mess, but you can have fun with it anyway. Like that's pretty much where I stand on it. Yeah. So
how about you, Max?
I love it. Listen, at the time I was disappointed because they weren't continuing with Val and they kept switching Batman. It was getting very frustrating being a Batman fan. But in retrospect,
it's still frustrating.
No, in retrospect, it's perfect because we got this is also what led to Batman Begins. Yeah. And then we got, Ben Affleck, and I mean, I want more Ben Affleck, but we got some substance there. He's in quite a few projects. This might be his last coming up with the Flash, and now we're getting Pattinson. Mm-hmm. So everything. This is what I say. Like, I appreciate everything in life because everything leads. This impacted, for better or for worse, the future of Batman. Yeah. Don't do this.
Yeah.
Or and it's not like it's whenever there's more product, I love it more. It's even more special to me because this probably won't happen again. Hopefully. Right. Like I don't see them doing this kind of shit with Batman again. Did you see the trailer for Joe here has the Batman shirt on.
Yeah, I have it on. Yep.
I don't know if you saw it yet.
No, I didn't see it yet. I'm seeing it tomorrow, but I am very excited about it.
So this type of Batman movie will probably never happen again.
I hope
it's going to become more. It's going to become more and more of a gem the farther we go into new future Batman projects.
Yes,
I don't see this happening again. It's very timely. It's special. Yeah. So no, I appreciate that it exists.
Yeah, I think since Clooney, honestly, like Batman has been treated really well since that movie. Like I feel like between Bale, Affleck, and now hopefully with Pattinson, like I really do feel like they've pretty much gotten Batman pretty all right, I guess. Other than the Justice League, I didn't like that Batman, but other than that movie, like they've gotten him right for the most part since then. So yeah, I definitely agree with him on that for sure.
And Devin, how about you? Closing thoughts on this movie? Like, do you feel like it's a bad product? Like, anything you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I think it's a bad movie. I can appreciate that, what Max said, like there's probably not going to be another Batman movie like this. Maybe that's the case, but I don't know. I always saw Schumacher's movies as kind of like an homage to like the Cesar Romero, Adam West kind of campy Batman series from the 60s. And looking at it through that lens, like those two movies were probably, if nothing else, capable homages to that wacky era of Batman. And maybe you'll get something like that in the future. I mean, nostalgia always pulls towards, revamping what was once popular. And at some point, somebody's going to want to make a 1960s Batman homage again. So at some point, we might see it. But, I guess for what it's worth, it's a pretty cool time capsule. But I would be happy if I never watched it again.
That's kind of where I leave off on this convo too. Like watching it 3 times in one day. I don't know why I do this to myself, but that's unfortunately how I'm able to remember things.
Whoa, 3 times! I didn't hear that part. Whoa, what is
yeah, no, that you might have been late for that, but yeah, that's kind of where I leave off on this. Like if I had to give it a rating, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, 3 out of 5, or something like that. Like it is below average for sure. To Joe's point, there's not that many memorable scenes. But I remember images, not so much scenes, if that makes sense. Like I remember, the Riddler, and I remember Two-Face, and I remember, the 2 female accomplices, and Chris O'Donnell and Val Kilmer, and maybe Chase Meridian. Like if I were to wait like a few weeks down the road and try to remember this movie, but I wouldn't. Remembering like actual like minute-long scenes would be very challenging for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I will say this, like one of the most memorable parts of this movie for me was how unbelievably nightmarishly horny Chase Meridian was for Batman. Immediately. Yep.
There are like so many like doctor laws or something that she's breaking with her patients, like patient confidentiality or whatever.
She used the bat signal to get him to the roof and like immediately started undressing. I was like, what is going on here?
It's the car, man. It's the car. Chicks dig the car.
Yeah, no,
yeah.
Definitely.
It's really sad also, like if there was more in like a Schumacher cut around that character where there's like more psychological exploration of Bruce Wayne via her expertise that was cut out, it's a travesty that what ended up as that character was someone who was mostly horny and then just like a damsel in distress.
Basically, that is her character arc. Yes.
Yeah, Lucky Day. I can agree. Like I did watch this over 3 times, and then maybe that was my fault. Yeah. But no, yeah, this has been a great conversation, y'all, and I'm so grateful for everyone to have made time today to talk about this weird movie that's a time capsule of the mid-90s. And yeah, no, we're gonna close out the show, going around the clock with starting with Joe. Where can we find you at, and what are you working on, my guy?
I am Real Shift on, you can see it right there in my name. I'm on YouTube. I do movie reviews and reactions. I typically react to like news articles and stuff like that about movies. Also, I keep it purely about entertainment. I've also gotten into doing some skits here and there, just kind of paying homage to movies that I love. I just did something with Wayne's World because that had its anniversary, and I did a review of that and had a little skit to go along with it. So that's fun. I like to do fun stuff like that. I do have very strong opinions, and I know that's not for everyone, but sometimes, but just know that even when I have strong opinions, it always comes from a place of passion. It's just because I love movies so much. It really has nothing to do with anything else. Like I just want what's best for movies. So yeah, come check me out. And yeah, my next video will be tomorrow night. Actually, it'll be my Batman review. So I'll be definitely excited to do that. I'm definitely looking forward to it. So yeah, come check me out if you haven't already. Yeah.
Awesome. And Devin, Yield Nerdcast, where can we find you at, and what are you currently working on?
You can find me at Olde Nerdcast on YouTube. I'm also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Olde Nerdcast. Right now, let's see. I mean, you're talking about strong opinions. Right now, I'm kind of wading into Elden Ring or with a lot of strong opinions of my own on that. I just dropped a video review on that on my YouTube channel if you want to check that out. I'm actually, I thought I put the game to bed, with all of my fierce, obvious dislike of it, but I feel like I'm being pulled back in to try to give it another fair shot, like an honest, fair, decent, non-spicy take on it next time. So I haven't fired up. I'm about to jump back into it, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm working through right now. Also, been watching Unsolved Mysteries. I got a video coming out tomorrow, I believe, where Justin and I got into a very contentious debate on an unsolved mystery case regarding what I thought was an unfair jail sentence. So that'll be interesting, I think, to see people's reaction to. And I'm also watching Beyond Belief with another streamer, a Twitch streamer, which has also been a lot of fun. So check me out on Twitch for those, and YouTube for just the clips I upload.
Awesome. And last but not least, Max Movies, where can we find you at, and what are you going to be working on? It looks like you're going to be streaming right after this.
Oh yeah, you're all invited if you want. No pressure. Movies, madness, and entertainment. I have a weekly or a daily show. I try to do as much as I can. 10 p.m. Eastern. I made a little bit later here for Rhea, so I could come here first. And yeah, we're great topics. We're gonna talk about The Punisher, how it may actually be coming back to Disney Plus, and that might be a shocker to someone. And then recent stuff where Disney has new parental controls, so they're setting the stage for more adult content. That's a game changer for Disney Plus. That is where they could get a boost. Disney has the image, but if they do that, and I'm very excited for The Punisher. I don't know where you find these people, Joe. You're a great guy. I'm going to check out Real Shift.
Thank you.
I haven't heard of you. I've been doing movie talk for a while. We haven't crossed paths, so I'm going to.
No. Yeah, that's why I was excited to do this to meet some new people, and because I've kind of been in my own corner of YouTube for a long time. I've never really interacted with a lot of other content creators, but now I'm starting to. So
that's Rhea. She brings people together. So
yeah,
thanks,
she
Rhea,
does
for having me on. I had a lot of fun, and fortunately, maybe I was feeling better because I didn't actually watch it recently. You watched it one time for me, Rhea.
I watched it one time for all three of you.
Yes,
yes, you did.
So yeah, no, this has been a really awesome conversation, and I know it's getting late for y'all East Coast folks, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you to Joe, Devin, and Max again for joining me for this panel. This has been episode 17 of the Glimmer Cast. I'm going to go ahead and play out our guests and the thanks for watching card, and thank you for watching. All right, take care. Bye, everyone.
Bye.